Once I'm done with the baking, the next thing I need to do is some finishing touches. In order to have better reflections in my interior scene, I need to add the reflection capture actors. The reflection capture actors are like small cameras that look in 360 degrees and capture on a small texture everything around them. That captured information is used to tell the objects in the scene that are reflective to use that small sphere for their reflections. In order to have good-looking reflections, I would always recommend to use multiple reflection spheres and try to keep them inside your interior scene, because if you place them outside of the windows, for example, you may end up with some strange reflections. I'll go to the Models tab, Visual Effects, and create a sphere reflection capture in my scene. You can see the effect showing on the vases when I turn on and off the reflection capture. Now, let's decrease the radius of the sphere. This will determine how far the sphere will affect the objects near it. I will speed up the process here, since this can take some time. You see the reflection effect on the curtains is too sharp. This is because it requires explicit baking of the light props for better looking reflections in the scene. Another important tip: place your spheres where you think the reflections of the nearby objects will be coming from. This way, when we take a walkthrough of the scene, we will see that our reflections behave similarly to the real world once we start walking with the VR headset. Once I'm done, let's go to the Build tab and select Build Reflection Captures. This will tell Unreal to take all the reflection spheres and bake them to capture more accurate reflections. Also, before I continue with anything else, I will make a new folder and I'll put all of my reflection captures in it. This way, I'll keep my scene organized so I can do additional edits if I need to in the future. Since I want to create more of an artistic look to my scene, let's now add some post-process effects to it. This will allow me to add additional effects such as lens flares, bloom, manual exposure, and other parameters that can drastically change the look and the mood of my scene. Now, if I go to the Visual Effects menu again, I can drag and drop a post-process into my scene. Let's disable again the Game View mode for a second. Then I'll go to the settings of the post-process volume, and all the way down, I'll first enable Infinite Extent. This way, the post-process effect will affect my entire scene. Now let's start tweaking some of the settings. First, let's enable bloom to make the lighting a bit softer and more interesting. I'm going to set the intensity to 3.56 and the threshold to negative 0.14. Next, let's set the exposure to manual and set the exposure component to 9. To make the scene more lively, I'll also enable lens flares. Let's lower the intensity a bit. Also, I'll increase my bokeh size and threshold to 32. Since I want a specific effect for my lens flares, I will enable the bokeh shape and I'll plug in a custom texture. Now, I can immediately see the effect on the screen while I'm looking towards the sun. Also, to change the mood of my scene, I'll go to the color grading and in the global settings, I will turn on the gamma and play with it a bit to get the desired mood for my scene. Finally, let's add an Unreal camera into the scene. And let's set the camera to universal zoom, so we have more control over the focal length. Then, I'll go to Details and change the focus method to None, and enter a focal length of 25. At this stage, I can go ahead and edit in real time the materials in the scene, and make them look more reflective or make some additional tweaks to them to get the final look that I desire, since the post-process effects will drastically affect the look and feel of your materials. Also, tweaking the materials at this stage does not affect your light maps, and having reflection capture actors will give you a more precise idea of how your objects will react when you play with their reflections. Okay, now let's do a quick fly through of the scene here to see how everything looks.